He slapped a check on white linen and said, "I'll give you $1 million if you can serve me in Arabic." I answered in his language perfectly, like it was my own name. By midnight, the man who used to sign my government timesheets was dead in a Manhattan hotel, and people were already whispering my name to the police. That's where this begins. I was hiding in plain sight at Lumiere, the kind of place where the napkins cost more than your rent, and the famous pretend not to see the staff. Red apron, black shoes, hair pulled tight so my past couldn't catch sight of me. After the UN mess 2 years earlier, invisibility wasn't a preference, it was survival. You know what I mean? Table 7 was a storm before I ever reached it. 3 men in suits that caught the candlelight like water, the center one leaning back with that lazy confidence money buys. Midnight blue jacket, dark beard, trimmed so sharp it could cut an apple eyes that weighed people like produce. I stepped into the glow of the table and smiled the kind of smile you learn in hospitality. Soft enough to be safe, firm enough to be real. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to Lumiere. May I start you with something to drink?" He didn't answer me. He turned to his companions and said something in Arabic that made them laugh. It wasn't cruel, not exactly. It was that assumption laughter people use when they're sure you won't understand a thing. I kept my face neutral. Silence is a tool if you hold it right. "A bottle of your 1982 Lafite Rothschild," he said finally, English smooth as glass, accent tucked in like a pocket square. "And perhaps you could recommend something special." "The chef's tasting menu is excellent tonight," I said, staying even. "There's a Wagyu course that's not on the regular menu." He leaned forward, elbows on linen, the smile of a man about to test a fence. "I'm not interested in what everyone else gets." His eyes dropped to my name tag, then back up. "I'm Karim Al-Fahad. Perhaps you've heard of me." I hadn't. I nodded anyway. His mouth tilted like he'd won a small game. "Actually," he said, and paused to make sure the nearby tables were listening. "I have a proposition for you." Forks paused. The pianist slowed a hair. "Rooms like that love a show." He slid a check across the cloth and tapped it with one manicured finger. "Zeros that could blind you. $1 million if you can take my dinner order in Arabic." Silence swelled. He waited for the blush, the fluster, the nervous laugh. I said in Arabic, simple and precise. "May I take your order, sir? I recommend the Wagyu slow-cooked for 8 hours with herbs imported from Morocco." "What would you prefer this evening?" The change on his face almost made a sound. His friends stared like I'd stepped out of a costume as someone else. "Where did you learn to speak like that?" he asked, also in Arabic, testing my vowels, my rhythm, my roots. "Harvard," I said, switching to English. "Linguistics, Semitic languages. Want me to try Farsi too?" He blinked. "And French, and Russian," I said. "Enough Mandarin to get by." I tapped the check with my pen. "Do you want to pay now or after dessert?" A woman at the next table clapped because New Yorkers love a takedown as long as it isn't theirs. Kareem's smile thinned, the kind men use when they don't lose often. "The check is yours," he said. "I'm a man of my word." I slid it back. "Keep your money, Mr. Al-Fahad. I don't need your charity." His security chief leaned in and murmured, and the moment shifted like a card cut clean. I fetched the wine. I did my job. When I returned with scallops, he apologized. The cool, polished apology of someone who treats remorse like cufflinks worn when appropriate. "Enjoy your meal," I said, and moved on. "Interrupt. This matters." The doors opened and Trouble wandered in wearing an expensive suit and last call eyes. Silver hair cheeks, too red, the slouch of a man who used to command rooms, but tonight couldn't command his own feet. Victor Caldwell, my old boss from the State Department. The air left my lungs like the room had a trap door. "Sam," he called across the dining room. "Samantha Adams." I kept walking towards the kitchen. The maitre d' tried to intercept him. A second man flashed credentials and guided Victor back out with calm hands. I didn't know then that second man's name, but I recognized the way he moved. Professional. Alert. That was Ahmad. When I returned with dessert, Karim watched me like I was a code he intended to crack. Harvard linguistics and your waiting tables, he said, voice light, question, heavy. Career changes happen, I said. He tipped 10,000, slid me a card. Consider it an investment. In what? A future conversation. I pushed the card back. Not all of us measure success by the size of our bank accounts. What's your measure then? Integrity, I said. Something money can't buy. Yeah, I said that. And yeah, I meant it. My shift ended, and I headed home. Third floor walk-up in Queens, 6 steps from the radiator to the fridge roommate, Lisa, waiting at the door with panic gripping her shoulders. You need to leave now, she said. 2 guys were asking for you. Dark suits, earpieces, not cops. My go bag was already packed. Paranoia was my co-pilot, and she was usually right. Passport cash, a small gun I hoped never to need. Lisa stared, soft voice sharp. Is this about your old job, the one you never talk about? I used to be a translator, I said, zipping up a life. I overheard something I shouldn't have. People died. She didn't need more detail than that. Secrets weigh too much on people who didn't choose to carry them. 20 minutes later, I was in a taxi to Brooklyn, ditching my phone after sending a coded text to the only person from my previous life who still answered. Weather turning bad, seeking new climate. Pattern interrupt. This is where the ground tilted. At a small hotel where I paid cash under a name that belonged to a woman who didn't exist, a knock landed on my door. Calm voice, low enough to be safe, loud enough to be heard. Ms. Adams, I apologize for the late hour. Give me one reason I should trust you, I said through the door. Because Victor Caldwell was found dead an hour ago, the voice said. And you're about to be framed for his murder. I checked the burner. Push alert blinking. Former State Department official found dead in Manhattan hotel. Caldwell. I opened the door on the chain. Ahmad stood there, hands visible, eyes steady. We followed the men who were following you, he said. Mr. Al-Fahad wants to help. Why would a billionaire help me? Because his parents' plane crash wasn't an accident, Ahmad said. And he believes the same people who killed them are coming for you. He wasn't wrong. Karim's Bentley waited at the curb, leather soft silence softer. Karim looked different than he had at table 7. The performance stripped away the edges real. Ms. Adams, he said, I believe we have a common enemy. Who? The people who murdered our fathers, he said, voice flat as a verdict. And who just used Caldwell as another piece on their board. At his penthouse above Central Park, he poured 2 drinks and then took a sip from mine before handing it over. A small thing, but it said, I'm not here to poison you, and I understood the gesture. Trust issues, he said lightly. Earned ones. He set a photo on the table. 2 men, 1990s sleeves, baggy smiles, easy. My father, Ibrahim, he said, tapping the taller one. And your father, David Adams. The room shifted. My father had been a cultural attaché, the kind of title that keeps Christmas letters interesting. The truth came later and cut sharper. He was CIA, I said. I didn't know until after he died. Karim nodded like he had been expecting me to say it. They worked together to stop a coup. Your father saved mine during an assassination attempt in 1998. 10 years later, my parents died in a plane crash. Victor Caldwell handled the American side of the investigation. He closed it fast. He opened a leather portfolio. Bank transfers that jumped borders like they were hopscotch squares, flight maintenance logs with convenient gaps, encrypted messages that circled the same names. It wasn't mechanical failure, he said. It was sabotage. I told him about the UN 2 years earlier. A phrase overheard in the wrong hallway, a code name that wouldn't leave my head. Operation Sandstorm. Names, dates, phase 2. The way files appeared in my secure pouch like ghosts with fingerprints. The robbery that killed my supervisor 3 days after I reported it. The running, the hiding, the quiet. So we go to the authorities, I said, already knowing the answer and hating that I did, and tell them what Karim asked. That a hotelier and a waitress cracked a conspiracy that lives in the shadows of governments, we'd be dismissed or silenced. He wasn't wrong there either. What do you suggest? I asked. Proof, he said. Not noise. The Falcon Charity Gala is tomorrow night. Mohammed bin Rashid will be there. I believe he orchestrated my parents' deaths. He never travels without a briefcase he doesn't trust anyone to hold. While he's on my ballroom floor, his suite will be vulnerable. You want to rob a terrorist at your own event. I want to steal the truth, he said. There's a difference. If we do this, I said, we do it my way. Clean professional contingency plans for when, not if, something goes wrong. He smiled, an unguarded human smile that made him look younger and more dangerous at the same time. Agreed. Stick around because what happened next will blow your mind. The ballroom was a garden of chandeliers and polished laughter. I wore a sapphire gown that glittered like it had secrets, a black mask, and a borrowed name. Isabelle Laurent, French art dealer. Karim played charming host hand at the small of my back, long enough to sell a story, eyes scanning the room like a chessboard. Ahmad's voice hummed in my ear. Bin Rashid arrived. Suite 4208. 2 guards downstairs, 2 upstairs. Shift change in 12 minutes. I laughed at a stranger's joke, drifted toward a service corridor, and slipped into the elevator. On the executive floor, carpet swallowed my footsteps. The door's keypad and card reader didn't care who I was. Ahmad's codes did. Inside the suite was money turned into silence. The safe sat behind a row of suits cut to intimidate. The override worked. The briefcase, Hermes gold hardware biometric lock, waited like a dare. I placed a compact over the scanner and let the device hum. 2 minutes, Ahmad breathed. The lock clicked. Inside folders that smelled like toner and arrogance, a small external drive, and every line I never wanted to read. Operation Sandstorm wasn't just a plan. It was a map for chaos. Names, wiring instructions, weapons caches tucked into corners on 3 continents, and the code name that made me grip the case to steady myself. American Eagle. Caldwell. I photographed everything with a lipstick camera, mirrored the drive to a twin in my clutch, replaced each page exactly where I'd found it. 30 seconds, Ahmad said. Voices in the corridor. Check the package before you return. Card beeped. Door opened. I slid behind the curtains, pressed flat to glass, slowed my breathing until my body forgot it belonged to me. 2 men entered. One opened the safe, checked the briefcase, reset the lock. The other stepped toward the window, paused so close I could smell his cologne, then turned. All secure. The door closed. I counted to 30 and walked out on legs that pretended not to shake. The elevator delivered me back to light laughter and a room full of people who had no idea a fuse had just been snuffed inches from their shoes. Karim found me first. Everything all right, darling? He asked for the audience. Perfect, I said, and for a breath it was. Then Mohammed bin Rashid approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. He took my hand, lifted it, held it a second longer than polite. Enchanté, he said. Have we met before? You seem familiar. I doubt it, I said in French. I've been in Europe. Geneva, he asked, considering. A diplomatic reception last year. Barcelona, I said. The lie was clean, but my pulse wasn't. He looked at me, really looked, and the recognition lit. No, he said softly. Washington, at the Saudi embassy. Ice slid through my veins. Karim stepped in, voice warm, smile perfect. Isabel has never been to Washington. We excused ourselves. In the limousine, the world shrank to the space between us. He recognized me, I said. He knows. Did you get what we needed? Karim asked, calm, like we were discussing menu options. I placed the camera and the drive in his hand. Everything. Names, dates, Caldwell. Then we have leverage, he said, fingers closing over mine. A quick human contact that startled us both. Noon tomorrow. Director Harlow. He was my father's friend. He'll listen. Ahmad's phone buzzed. His face went flat. Security breach at the penthouse. Someone tried to override the private elevator. We're not going back, Karim said. My mother's old apartment in Queens. Off the books. We spread the evidence across that small living room floor. Printouts, timelines, transactions. And built the case like a bridge, each piece bearing weight. Karim loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves, and let the decade of grief sit beside him without apology. I translated, cross-referenced, stitched the threads. It felt like breathing after holding my breath for years. Director Harlow will meet us at noon, Karim said, reading a burner. Will I be safe? I asked the question, leaving my mouth before I meant it to. As long as you're with me, he said. And I wanted to believe him enough that for a second I did. Perimeter, Ahmad said, voice clipped. Black SUV, 2 men, they've found us. How Karim snapped. The caterer, I said. If they're monitoring vendor payments, they could trace last night's delivery here. Ahmad was already moving. They're inside the building. I'll take the front and make noise. You two go down the fire escape. We ran. Metal stairs, groaning alley yawning, briefcase heavy with proof. We cut through back streets until the subway swallowed us, slid into a car, as the doors hissed, blended into commuter gray. For a minute, we were just people on a train. Thank you, I said, voice small in the hum, for believing me, for helping me. I should thank you, he said, tucking a stray strand of hair behind my ear, like he'd known me longer than a few days. I had pieces. You brought the picture. If it were you, what would you have done? Take the million and run. Keep your head down and pray the storm passes, or risk everything to pull the right thread. Do you think that's fair? That dignity is something people think they can buy with a number and a smile. Central Park was bright, and bright felt rude. The boathouse was quiet in that government way, like sound knew to behave. 2 men nodded us in. Director Harlow stood there, silver hair eyes like cold water. He hugged Karim like a son, shook my hand like a promise. My father's death wasn't a heart attack, I said, because some truths don't like waiting for permission. I'm beginning to believe that he said. Show me. We did. 30 minutes of pages, transfers, timelines, names big enough to bend rooms. When he looked up, his face carried the kind of weight that makes phones ring. This goes deep, he said. Elements inside our own government. We move now. Safe house for both of you. We'll coordinate the takedown. Both of us, I asked. You'll need to testify, he said. And until we crack every node, you are both targets. Ahmad stumbled in blood-dried dark along his temple, breath shallow. They know, he said. Bin Rashid fled an hour ago. He activated sleeper cells. Target is the UN General Assembly. Today. Harlow was already on the phone, a storm of names and codes, orders snapping into place. The next hour was a blur. Sirens without sound, doors closing in other buildings, teams moving like ink spreading on water. By midday, headlines hit. A major plot foiled arrests, citywide assets frozen the shape of a monster, turned into a map of handcuffs. You expect triumph to feel loud. It didn't. It felt like breathing after you forgot how. Not finished, Harlow said quietly. But the immediate threat is down. Co-conspirators, handled at the highest levels, behind closed doors, always behind closed doors. What about the charges against Samantha? Karim asked, still holding my hand like a fact. Cleared, Harlow said. The evidence points to a frame. Months later, I stood on a deck off the Amalfi Coast and tried to understand how a red apron and a borrowed French accent turned into a life where the sea looked like a promise. We started a foundation with the money from that ridiculous check. The Adams Al-Fahad Initiative for International Peace. Ahmad ran security with quiet pride. Karim stepped back from the front lines of his hotel empire, but never from the ownership. Power requires distance if you want to sleep at night. Here's the part people argue with. Some men who fueled Sandstorm never saw a courtroom. They retired with honors, gave speeches about duty, let the headlines fade. Not because the truth wasn't there, but because power decides which truths get daylight. Yeah, that happened. And no, I'm not okay with it. So when people ask if I regret pushing the check back across the linen that night at Lumiere, I think about the sound the room made when I answered in Arabic. I think about the fire escape under my feet and the subway that made us anonymous. I think about a small boathouse where justice wore practical shoes and moved fast. And I think about the locked doors where justice still hasn't been invited in. If it were you, would you have taken the money, disappeared, told yourself you'd done enough? Or would you have turned it into something the world could use and risked the cost that comes with it? Language is power. Not just Arabic or Russian or Mandarin. The language of contracts. The language of silence. The language of who gets to speak and who gets told to smile and pour the wine. That night, I chose my language. I refused to sell it for a number that would look good on a headline. And the man who tried to buy it, he became the person who stood beside me when the world pushed back. People can change, or maybe they can remember who they were before bad habits got expensive. That's my story. A waitress who wasn't just a waitress. A billionaire who wasn't just a billionaire. Two fathers who weren't just names on stone. A conspiracy that almost worked and didn't, because two people carried evident stubbornness and just enough faith to put it in the right hands at the right time. Now I want to hear yours. Do you think private power should step in when public systems stall, or does that only make the system weaker the next time? Say it. Tell me if you would have taken the million, if you would have walked away from the limo, if you think I should have kept my head down and stayed a ghost. If you've ever been underestimated because of your job, your accent, your clothes, tell me what you did or what you wish you'd done. Drop a comment. Share this with someone who needs a reminder that integrity isn't a luxury item. And if you want more real stories told straight, hit subscribe and stay close. Your voice, your judgment, your story. That's the conversation I'm asking for. What would you have done?